on 531 VI.
It is 8 minutes past 7 o'clock. This is Pacific Mornings. Now, ACT leader and incoming Deputy Prime Minister David Seymour has criticised New Zealand's ministerial structure as bloated and symbolic, calling for a major reduction in the number of ministers, portfolios and government departments. The leader joins me now to discuss this. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Will.
Look, let's start with the obvious. Why are you perhaps hell-bent on shrinking the size of government?
Well, I think it's important to recognise that people are working pretty hard. They pay, depending on how much you earn, anywhere from about 20 to about 30% of your income that goes to government. You buy stuff, you pay another 15% of GDP. You get home, you pay your rates on your property. If you're paying rent, then your landlord's adding that rates onto your rent. And you say, okay, altogether, probably about a third of your money and your effort goes to government. And the question is, what do we get for that? I think the promise is that if you give enough money to government, all the services will work, no one goes hungry, the streets are safe. And, compared with most places in the world, that actually works in New Zealand. We're pretty lucky. There's some big problems, but we're mostly one of the luckiest places on earth in terms of the outcomes we get. So it's not bad. But I just question whether we really need to have, for example, 82 different ministerial portfolios. Nobody can list them all. I couldn't list them all if you challenged me to now. We've got 28 ministers and we've got 41 government departments. And then the connections between them are quite confusing. You've got some people who might be partially in charge of 5 different departments. You've got one department that has 19 ministers that are all partly in charge of it. And then you've got a lot of departments that I'm not sure you'd start again if you were starting from scratch today. And I just think if we want to make sure that people really do get a good deal, safe streets, welfare, healthcare, education, roads and infrastructure in return for the considerable amount of tax they pay, then it might be better organised if you had one minister per department, one department per minister. You had only departments that have a proper budget and do things that people actually value, like, say, police or healthcare. But at the moment, we have, for example, a minister for child poverty reduction. Now, we all want to reduce child poverty, but having a minister with that title hasn't actually achieved it. There is no child poverty reduction department. There is no child poverty reduction budget. It's just a title that Labor created. There's also a minister for Auckland, but there's no Auckland department. There's no Auckland title. And so you've got all of these people running around. And what we really want to know is, you're the Minister for Education. You deliver these services. I know you're accountable. The department knows who they work for, and it's all sweet. So I just think a massive simplification would help people get better value for the money they pay.
Perhaps I'm being facetious, but is there just, for lack of a better phrase, is there too much virtue signalling going on at that level?
Well, I think so. If you look at that child poverty reduction, now, if there was a department that's job is to reduce child poverty, sure. But actually, we've got Oranga Tamariki, that's the Minister for Children in charge of that. We've got the Ministry for Social Development, that's the welfare department, if you like. There's a minister in charge of that. We've got the education system and the health system. Those are the 4 main ways that we try and keep children safe and out of poverty. But then, you've also got an additional minister. It's not obvious what value it adds. I know why Jacinda Ardern did it. She created the Minister for Child Poverty Reduction because she wanted to be able to tell voters that she was doing something. But actually, she wasn't. There wasn't a bit of work going on. There wasn't a department. There were other ministers already doing those things. And so I just think, ministers should be there to make sure that taxpayers get good value from their money, rather than as a political tool to show that a government cares about something. We all care. There's no point having a competition to show who cares the most. What we want to see is government departments that deliver really good results so we actually can reduce child poverty.
Again, it makes sense the position that you're stating, at least to me, that is. But here's a question for you: do you, in your line of view, do you want to scrap, say, the Pacific People's Minister portfolio? Is that another example to you of virtue signalling?
Yeah, and I'm not going to call it virtue signaling, but I've made this example before. I mean, we have a minister for Pacific Peoples, a minister for women, we have a minister for youth, we have a minister for ethnic people, we have a minister for Māori affairs, and yet all of these departments, I mean, they don't actually deliver services. If you're a Pacific person, then what you want is the Minister for Health to do their job so you can get to see your doctor and get into a hospital if you need an operation. You want the Minister of Education to do their job so your kids have an opportunity. And you want infrastructure to work so you've got a shot at buying a house. What you need is for the ministers that actually have departments that deliver services to you to perform. I'm not sure how having, what did I just list, 5 ministers that aren't actually delivering a service. They just sort of represent, I guess, a political move towards a type of person. That to me is not really making the boat go faster. It does add a lot of cost and confusion.
Indeed. Look, I think perhaps there will be those listening this morning, though, that would be like, well, how will you show those issues still matter if they are taken away? I mean, what's your argument to that?
Well, I think that we should start from a basic view of universal humanity. Every person matters. And most people, there are multiple characteristics they have. So a person will have their background, their heritage. Many New Zealanders have multiple heritages because so many different people have come from different places to these islands and they've had families together. People will have their beliefs, their faith, their religion. People will have their attitudes. Are you a person who, really wants to work hard and make the most of, as much money as you can, or are you someone who says, well, look, actually, money's not everything. What's important to me is time with my family. And I could go on, what sort of music and sport people like, and so on. My point is that I don't think a government can ever capture every aspect of every person. What I think the government should do is take your taxes, deliver high quality services, and then allow people to get on living in their way. Now, when it comes to those services, look, I'm a big fan of charter schools. I've probably talked about that a few times on your show. But we don't have charter schools because of any of those ministries. We don't have it because of the Ministry for Pacific Peoples. And yet we've seen charter schools like Sir Michael Jones's school, Sita Salupe's school, that were very much Pacific focused. So I'm in favour of being able to deliver services the way that people want them. I think whānau ora is actually a good idea, even if there's been some problems with the way it's been done lately. I think the idea that Ngāti Whātua, the iwi, are doing healthcare differently with NIB, I love that. So there's no reason that once you've got ministers and departments getting value for taxpayers' money, it doesn't mean that they can't do things in a way that appeals to different people, if that's what they want. But when it comes to saying I'm the minister that represents who you are, well, actually, all of us are many things.
Fair point. Look, let's turn our attention just very quickly to the Australian election, and I'm sure you have to be diplomatic in your language here, but Peter Dutton, and this is my assessment, and the Liberals got absolutely walloped. Do you think this was a resounding rejection of that Trump style of politics?
Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, I'm part of the New Zealand government. Our job is to have a good relationship with the Australian government. I know Chris Luxon, as our Prime Minister, has already spoken to their Prime Minister, and that's a good thing because Australia is ultimately New Zealand's only true friend in the world, in my view. I think it's that relationship it's our only military alliance, at least, is probably a better thing to say. But if you want to analyse the politics, I mean, I think if you look at what's happened in Canada, what's happened in the UK with their council elections, and what you look at what's happened in Australia as well, it seems to me that Trump is certainly affecting the way that people think about politics because he's done it so differently. And it may be that for some voters, whether they're doing it consciously or subconsciously, they're asking themselves, if he's the guy that's making all the change in the world, do I want a leader more or less like that? That's possible, but to be honest, I haven't really seen the research and the polling into what Australian voters are thinking. So that's just a theory.
Indeed. Do you think this? Will you be taking any lessons from this election over in Australia? I also understand that we're quite vast and different in terms of our own elections. No elections are the same.
Well, I mean, one of the things I've heard people say in recent days is that they didn't focus enough on the economy, and they didn't have a clearly defined proposition that was different from the other guys. I mean, both parties seem to have quite similar economic policies that were basically, we'll give you money. What I try to do as ACT, say, look, we're not the party that'll give you lots of money. If you want to vote for someone that promises you they'll give you a few bucks, there's lots of parties to vote for. We're the party that says you can keep your money for you and your family and your friends and charities churches that you choose to give it to, rather than having the government taking a lot of your money and giving it back. So often not very good causes, as we've seen with government in every country, including New Zealand. So my view is, have a really strong message that we're here to allow New Zealand to succeed, and New Zealand can only succeed when every New Zealander can succeed. And that often means the government leaving them alone and letting them do more for themselves and the people they care about.
Indeed. Look, let's switch tack now and move to the Regulatory Standards Bill. Just taking a look at some of the media coverage around this, I mean, one of the words that's often associated with this is it's controversial. Now, again, I'm just reading this off an article because it's perceived by some as an attempt to entrench a neoliberal ideology that prioritises economic freedom over other important considerations like environmental protection, social justice, and the Treaty of Waitangi. What do you make of that?
I've been really surprised at how few people criticizing the bill like that have read it. They could go and read the report that was produced in 2010 that explains the basis behind the bill. It explains, line by line what it does. And what it basically does is says, look, if a politician wants to make a law, then they have to declare, are they taking away a person's freedom? And if they are, why? Now, I've heard people say you can't have environmental protection. You absolutely can, but you have to explain the logic. So yes, we are going to restrict the number of fish you can catch. I think we should do that. Why? Well, there's a fundamental reason why government has to act. If two people go out fishing and neither of them trust the other one not to catch all the fish, then they'll both just try and get as many as they can now, even though there might not be any fish next season. That's the fundamental problem that people face. You can't trust each other. The government comes in, makes a rule, says, look, it's okay, folks. Everyone's just going to take, say, 9 snapper. That's it. And then everyone knows that everyone else is following the rules and there'll be more fish next season. But you can actually show the justification for restricting freedom. Other rules that get put in place, for example, the government put in strict rules around earthquakes. They banned people from using buildings if they said they were earthquake prone. And the truth is that 10 years later, there's lots of towns in New Zealand with abandoned buildings. They're still there. They didn't fall over. They were never going to. It was just a panic after the Canterbury quakes, and it's cost New Zealanders billions and billions of dollars. If you had to go through the same process with that law, you'd probably say, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't restrict people from using their buildings. Maybe you should leave it up to them to take the risk, because the risk they face is much lower than things like getting ill or being in a car crash. And if we don't force them to spend money on abandoning or upgrading their buildings, they could use their money for something else. So all we're talking about with the Regulatory Standards Bill is a higher level of discussion, transparency, and principle, so that when governments make rules, we actually know that they're not just doing it for fun, they're not just doing it for politics, they're doing it because they've identified a problem, like with the fishing, that can't be solved any other way.
You're often getting yourself into uncomfortable conversations. Do you ever just sit back and think, boy, is this actually worth it?
Oh, look, it's absolutely worth it. I want to be remembered as a politician who cared so deeply about this country that they were prepared to take a hit on, their own personality, their own comfort, have people say you're bad and don't like you. But at the end of it, every idea I advance has merit. The Treaty Principles Bill, lots of people said I'm a bad person, I'm racist, and all these things. But
Mm,
nobody's ever actually, even in the debate in Parliament, nobody got up and said, this is what the Treaty Principles Bill says. This is why I disagree with it, and this is how I would do it differently. So, I put forward ideas people may not like, but they advance the debate because people are challenged to come up with a better way. And if they can't, and they resort to personal attacks on me, well, that's on them. But I feel that I'm making New Zealand a better place. And the Regulatory Standards Bill, I believe, will raise the amount of transparency that politicians have to show when they make laws. And that is good for democracy because it allows voters to choose more clearly what sort of politicians and what sort of policies they're getting.
yeah, awesome. Hey, look, before we wrap it up, a cheeky one perhaps to end on. As the countdown is on to you becoming Deputy Prime Minister, how are you feeling ahead of it?
Look, to be honest, I've got so much on this week. It's not for another few weeks, so I haven't thought much. But look, I think it's a great honour, and it shows that someone like me, who has come into politics with no support, just one of me, barely won my electorate the first time round, and over time I've worked, I've gained people's support, and I've got to this position. I'm really proud of that, and I think it shows that in this country you can actually get somewhere. It hasn't been an easy 10 years, as you just
Mm.
said. A lot of people attack me and all the rest, but I'm really proud of where I've got to.
That is ACT Leader and incoming Deputy Prime Minister David Seymour. Thoroughly enjoy these conversations. Have a good rest of your day,
Yeah.
eh?
Thanks, Will. Me too.